Hey everyone, welcome to the stream. So Trump finally did it. We he told us he told us 2 weeks, and 2 weeks has always been code in Trump language for nothing's ever going to happen. So when he had that infrastructure week, it was always supposed to be 2 weeks away, and that was kind of a running joke in the first administration. And this time something happened within the 2 weeks. It looked like it was going in this direction. In the last few days, basically, when the Trump administration and Witkoff were saying there needed to be no enrichment from Iran. That was always kind of a deal breaker because that's not the way, that's not the basis on which the negotiations had been conducted before with this administration and previous administrations. And then there didn't appear to be any kind of movement away from that when Trump gave this 2 week kind of window. And so, like, what was going to change? The Trump administration still reiterated that it was going to be within 2 weeks. Um, they still reiterated that they were going for zero enrichment, and the Iranians didn't look like they were going to budge from that under duress, under the situation, under the situation where Trump was, forcing them to negotiate at the point of a gun. And so this kind of had to happen unless Trump just kind of uh, melted away and hoped people would forget, which he does sometimes, but not something that's this kind of high stakes, something that people are paying this close attention to. So it seemed like he would do it. Um, and and so, like, where do we go from here? The idea that the U.S. will bomb Iran, like, this is kind of cool. U.S. bomb Iran. This was like has been a meme since the Bush administration. So Bush, in the 2002 State of the Union address, 2001 you have 9/11, 2002 you have the State of the Union address, and Bush goes, there's an axis of evil. There is uh, Iraq, Iran, North Korea. We overthrew Iraq. North Korea had nuclear weapons, and Iran just kind of was always there as this like country seen as this hostile entity to the United States. And there was like once a Seymour Hersh report that I don't remember the exact details, but he basically said the Bush administration was going to soon bomb Iran. I don't know he was saying it was going to be in weeks or a couple of months, but I remember Seymour Hersh said this. I never trusted Seymour Hersh. I didn't trust him before, and I didn't trust him after this. He was saying now this time the Trump administration was going to bomb Iran, but I mean everyone kind of knew that the Trump administration was probably going to bomb Iran. But I remember him being wrong, him presenting this like it was going to happen during the Bush administration. And this was late in the Bush administration. So it wasn't like that wild period between 9/11 and the war in Iraq. It was like, late when like the Bush administration had been chastened a little bit and was still fighting the wars that had already started, but wasn't going around and starting new wars. It wasn't doing that in the second administration. And so this was always an idea. And there was also idea like Obama, he comes, he negotiates with Iran. The idea is that, if it fails, we're going to might have to go to war with Iran. The Israelis always want us to do this. Then Trump comes along, he rips up the JCPOA. It's also an open question. So now this has been going on for over 20 years, where it's like bomb Iran. Is a meme. In the 2008 presidential election, somebody questioned John McCain in a hostile way about bombing Iran, and he starts singing "bomb, bomb, 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 bomb Iran," just like kind of making light of it. McCain was kind of a crazy person. He might have actually done it if he'd won. And so, here we are, and and so now it's happened, and always, you know, and it was always like the anti-interventionists always use around like, oh my God, like I don't want to go to war with Iran. I don't want to die for Israel, right? It's always been like this like we're gonna bomb Iran was like always this like nightmare scenario of like people who are anti-interventionist. And I think that they're kind of exaggerating the dangers here. Because look, people I think, overestimate the likelihood of US sending ground troops. Like there's no chance of that. Why is there no chance of that? Because we never send ground troops to anything ever. We only did it since Vietnam, since the 1960s. We did it in Iraq and Afghanistan, large scale nation building. And this was all within a year and a half of 9/11. So there was 9/11. The country was in shock. The Bush administration put all its political capital in. First, we went into Afghanistan, but then the Bush administration put all its political capital into going into Iraq. And it's not like we ever sent ground troops anywhere again. We don't. I mean, we do. Like, there's troops in Niger. They get killed every once in a while. There's like, these individual cases, but there's no large scale occupations going on that cost a lot of lives. We're in Syria, but it doesn't cost a lot of lives. Maybe, a handful, every year or so. And so the idea that we're going to send our troops into Iran in a serious way, it's not a realistic consideration. So take that off the table. I mean, these people are like, they're always worried about doing Iraq again, and we're not going to do Iraq. Iraq was a very, very special case. It needed to happen within 18 months and the entire propaganda kind of, the country went crazy for like a year and a half after 9/11. And then we went into Iraq, and like 60 or 70% of Americans in polls said that they believed that Saddam had something to do with 9/11. The Bush administration had confused them on this, not directly lying about it, but kind of implying it. And this was, the country was like, thought it was getting revenge for 9/11. And so, like, that's what gave us troops to Iraq. And we were also naive. Like, we didn't have Iraq, the example of Iraq. We had example of Vietnam, which had been decades earlier. And so now we have the example of Iraq. We don't have the 9/11 thing. There's no kind of like uniform consensus in the country. Like, nobody's going to lead us into like, overwhelming support for a ground war in Iran like we had with Iraq. And so it's not going to happen. And so that's not okay. Cut that out. So that one scenario: U.S. ground troops, U.S. occupation, nation building. Forget about that. The second thing that they talk about is World War Three. Like, this is another thing that's just very, very stupid. Like, you'll see it with like McGregor, and McGregor is. I mean, like, it's amazing that anyone listens to this man. But they're like, oh yeah, Russia and China are gonna like. Russia and China don't care about Iran. There was just an article in the New York Times of like Russia is not even bothering to like provide the most minimum help to Iran. They have nothing, they don't care about Iran. Iran helped them in the Ukraine war. They gave them a lot of drones, even some missiles that were useful. But Russia, they don't seem like they're obligated to pay it back, because a lot of people don't. I mean, Israel, they have relationships with Israel. The Europeans, don't like Iran. The Arab states, even though they've been making more peace with Iran lately, still. I mean, so the Russians, have other relationships in the Middle East that they value. So like Russia and like China are going to go to war for Iran. Like, it's just insane. Like, why would anyone think this? And so people are just kind of fantasizing. They so hate the idea of us going to war that they make up these scenarios, these nation building, this World War III, this other, just completely crazy stuff. Like, also Ukraine, like, oh, World War III. Like, no, that's not also not World War III. That's more likely to be World War III than US and Iran. But the idea that, even the idea that the Russia-Ukraine war is going to be like World War III, that's also ridiculous. And this is even more ridiculous. So anyone who talks like this has no idea what they're talking about. Okay. All right. So that's the two things. So like these two things, get that off the table. That's the things not to worry about. Um, the things to, I think, worry about here is, I mean, it's not going to affect America really. So one thing you might be worried about is a regime destabilization. And I think this is actually good, because I've always thought that, like, look, the idea that the lesson of Iraq is that you never change a government, I think, is a very stupid lesson to draw. The U.S. Worked to end the Soviet Union. We didn't like invade the Soviet Union and get regime change, but we did propaganda. Reagan said tear down this wall. Some people within the foreign policy establishment were scared. They didn't want something as destabilizing as the collapse of the Soviet Union. That seemed like crazy. Like, there was nukes. There's like all these different countries. Like, what would the world look like in that case? So you can imagine like how scary, like, in 1985, the collapse of the Soviet Union would be. But it worked out amazingly well, given this. Like, okay, yeah, Russia was in bad shape in the 1990s, but like Poland and Hungary and even Kazakhstan got wealthier. Even the stands, started doing better. Russia's living standards picked up. They, after had about 10 years or so. But then the Baltic states, like you have like 7 or 8 countries that just became first world nations from third world nations. Within 10, 15, 20 years. That's an amazing accomplishment. So like as much as Iraq was a disaster, um, the Soviet Union was like a massive success. So we have that. We have Germany and Japan. We can go back further. So like sometimes regime change is good. Sometimes it's bad. What determines whether it's good or bad? Well, it's hard to say because the future is hard to predict. But one way, um, one way to kind of think about it, one way I think about it is like take how bad the regime is, and then take the human capital potential of the population. And if it's a really bad regime with high human capital population, then you should be more inclined to overthrow. Germany and Japan, good examples of this, right? It's two of the smartest nations in the world. Really bad governments under Hitler and the Imperial Japan. We got rid of them. Better governments. Those countries had all kinds of potential. So that was a great thing to do. North Korea today, I would like there like I people have argued with me, and I'm surprised that people argue this. I would take regime change in a heartbeat if like all the government could die. Like Asians are remarkably successful everywhere. Get rid of this government. Like maybe something worse, but it would be very strange if Koreans produce something worse than Kim. Like there's nothing worse than Kim Jong Un in the world. Even a civil war. Most civil war countries have better growth than North Korea. They probably wouldn't have civil war in North Korea, but obviously it would be a good thing. Now, where are we with Iran? Iran is a country with real scientific accomplishments, with a long history, with a regime, with a people that have gone to the streets and died in the thousands for liberalism. Like you don't find that in every authoritarian regime. You didn't find that in Saddam's Iraq. You did not find that in Afghanistan under the Taliban, obviously. You didn't find that in Libya under Gaddafi. And so this is different. And then the regime is like a pretty bad regime, obviously. It's among the worst in the world. It's not even like even its economic policies and such are bad. Forget about set aside their unfriendliness to women and making those beautiful women cover up their hair. That, just there's economic mismanagement is bad enough. And so, like, you roll the dice on that. So, I'm not saying that this will overthrow the Iranian regime, but this is what people are afraid of. And I think you don't necessarily fear that. I mean, it's like no civil war, no government change is ever a good thing. We never hope for that. We just hope every government lasts forever. Like, what is this? This is decadent. This is weak. This is like the idea that like nobody should ever hope for anything better. And since we're not going to be fighting and we're not going to be dying, we could just drop some bombs. We could do some, and you can say, well, it might strengthen their regime. It might, who knows? But countries often fall during wartime. I mean, that's like very destabilizing. World War One ended the Russian Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, ended the German Reich, the Ottoman Empire. All that's from World War One. So this happens. Pretty regularly. War is risky. I don't see any like medium term prospect for the Iranian regime to be overthrown now. So it's like I think regime change is like a good option. Like it's something we should want. And even if it's Syria. Syria has been at civil war for 11 years. Okay, so